Xi Jinping has repeatedly said
that the Taiwan issue is a matter for the Chinese people alone, and that it must be decided by Chinese people themselves. Beijing, he says, will pursue peaceful reunification with the greatest sincerity and the greatest effort possible, but it will never promise to give up the option of using force. Then came November 2025. Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi stood up in the Japanese Diet and declared, "If Taiwan has an emergency, then Japan has an emergency." That single sentence instantly triggered a full-blown diplomatic confrontation between China and Japan. Before the echoes had even faded, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te went public with a bombshell of his own, saying that Beijing might attempt to unify Taiwan by force in 2027. Taiwan's government soon announced plans to spend 1.25 trillion new Taiwan dollars to strengthen its defenses and purchase American weapons. With just those two statements, the Taiwan Strait was pushed straight into the global spotlight. At this point, if anyone still doubts the CCP's determination to unify Taiwan by force, that's not skepticism. That's an IQ deficit. So the real question is this: can the CCP actually win this war? Is it really 3 days to liberate Taiwan, or is it just flashy posturing with no real substance? Some people argue that if China took Taiwan in 3 days, China's global status would skyrocket overnight, while the United States would suffer a dramatic decline. Others say, you think the PLA would need 3 years to fight Taiwan? 3 days! The PLA already knows exactly where Lai Ching-te lives, who lives where, everything is marked. Once the war starts, decapitation strikes instantly. No one survives. But if Taiwan could really be taken in 3 days, why hasn't Beijing done it yet? That's what we're here to talk about today. When it comes to Taiwan, there are currently 2 popular narratives. The first is the 3-day victory theory. Let's call it the quick win theory. This is extremely popular among mainland influencers. The second is the PLA incompetence theory, which claims the PLA doesn't even have the ability to invade Taiwan at all, and that all current rhetoric is just empty talk. The truth is, both are wrong. My view on the Taiwan Strait can be summarized in 3 points. First, the PLA currently does not have the ability to invade Taiwan. It still needs several more years of preparation. Second, the PLA is improving very quickly, major leaps every year. In about 5 or 6 years, it may gain initial invasion capability. Third, whether a Taiwan Strait war will actually happen exists in a Schrödinger-like state. Believe it won't happen and it might not. Doubt it and it might. Now let's start with why the quick win theory is absurd. Taiwan is arguably the hardest island in the world to invade. No exceptions. Even if the US military tried, it would suffer serious losses. Why? Geography. Geography determines how armies fight. No military can magically create terrain. It can only adapt to what already exists. If the Taiwan issue were a chess game, geography would decide most of the board before the first move. Anyone with basic military knowledge knows that amphibious landings are the most difficult operations in modern warfare. Large-scale cross-sea deployment is far harder than people imagine. Even the US and the Soviet Union proved, through past operations, that strategic deployment depends on overwhelming air power, naval power, and logistics. Even crossing a strait requires huge numbers of transport aircraft. Sea deployment requires large amphibious ships and helicopters. Among all islands, Taiwan is the hardest target. The Taiwan Strait is only about 180 kilometers wide, but moving large forces across it is a nightmare. The Kuroshio Current flows year-round at over 1 meter per second. During monsoon season, waves can reach 3 to 4 meters. Landing craft in those conditions behave like rubber ducks in a bathtub. The window for large-scale landings is less than 30 days per year, and planners must consider wind, tides, and radar coverage. Even assembling a fleet is a complex math problem. Invading Taiwan is far more difficult than the Normandy landings or the Russia-Ukraine war. Normandy involved a 50-kilometer crossing. The Allies successfully deceived Germany, gained absolute air and sea control, and landed on terrain suitable for expansion. Even then, casualties reached nearly 120,000. Taiwan's terrain is even worse for attackers, and today, strategic deception is far harder due to modern surveillance. China would need forces far larger than those used in Normandy, across land, sea, air, cyber, and information warfare, with even higher risks and casualties. Comparing Taiwan to Ukraine is also misleading. Ukraine is a land war. Russia and Ukraine share a long border with many attack points supported by roads and railways. Tanks can drive straight in. Logistics are easier. Taiwan is different. Many people compare troop numbers and conclude Taiwan cannot win. But Taiwan doesn't need to win. It only needs to hold. History is full of defenders with fewer troops defeating larger attackers using fortifications. Taiwan's natural defenses, the strait and the terrain, exceed those of any fortress in the world. For China, troops mean nothing if they can't cross the strait. And the PLA can't just flatten Taiwan with missiles. Beijing doesn't want to destroy Taiwan. Taiwan has built underground military facilities for years. Missile strikes can destroy some assets, but not force immediate surrender. Even the rocket force's advantages are limited. For Beijing, victory means occupying the entire island, quickly. This is a war with a time limit. If it drags on, sanctions will cripple the economy and logistics will collapse. A slow win is a loss. Now let's talk about how the PLA might attack. There are two main theories: blockade or invasion. A blockade is extremely hard to enforce and gives international actors excuses to intervene. More importantly, China itself depends on maritime energy imports through choke points like the Malacca Strait, controlled by the US. Blockade Taiwan and others block your oil. And Taiwanese society doesn't respond well to pressure. A blockade alone wouldn't force surrender. Eventually, any plan leads to landing troops. So here are the four major challenges of an invasion. 1. Landing is extremely difficult. If PLA troops reach the beach, the mission is already halfway successful. But modern intelligence makes surprise nearly impossible. Taiwan and the US would know immediately. Taiwan's east coast is all cliffs. The west coast is mostly shallow beaches, unsuitable for large ships. Only about 14 landing sites exist, and only 4 support large-scale landings, all heavily fortified for decades. 2. Cross-sea transport is the PLA's biggest weakness. Despite improvements, transport capacity is insufficient. Studies estimate daily supply needs at 80,000 tons, while PLA capacity is around 35,000 tons. Amphibious ships, transport aircraft, fuel, medical support, all are limiting factors. Full logistics modernization could take 5 to 7 more years. 3. Rapid advance is extremely hard. Even after landing, advancing quickly is difficult. Western cities are flat, but eastern Taiwan is mountainous. Heavy equipment can't pass. Infantry must fight uphill against fortified positions. CSIS ran 24 simulations. In most, PLA advances slowly, Taiwan resists fiercely, and the longer it drags on, the more likely US and Japan intervene. 4th, international countermeasures. Japan is likely to intervene. The US may not send troops immediately, but support is certain. Western sanctions would follow. Japan now has 7 helicopter carriers, effectively light aircraft carriers. Combined with Taiwan, Japan's military power is significant. China's economy depends heavily on energy imports. Long-term sanctions could destabilize society within 3 to 6 months, based on COVID-era experience. The CCP leadership understands all this and is preparing, militarily, economically, and diplomatically. The 3-day victory crowd are either ignorant, chasing clicks, or deliberately boosting morale. But the PLA can never invade crowd is also wrong. The PLA is closing gaps rapidly. By 2025, China had over 500 nuclear warheads. By 2030, over 1,000. DF-26 missile accuracy is around 10 meters. Aircraft carriers are entering service. Drones, lasers, quantum communications, all advancing fast. Civilian ships are being integrated into military logistics. Roll-on, roll-off vessels can boost transport to 60,000 troops initially, 300,000 within 10 days. China dominates global shipbuilding. More than half of world capacity, over 200 times that of the US. This industrial base matters. Economically, China is stockpiling oil, grain, and gold. Gold reserves exceed 2,300 tons. Oil storage exceeds 2 billion barrels. Grain reserves cover over half of global stocks. These are wartime preparations. Intelligence networks in China have been dismantled. Psychological and information warfare against Taiwan has intensified. From diplomacy to influence operations, the first phase has already begun. Taiwan is not just a China-Taiwan issue, it is global. Taiwan sits at the heart of the first island chain and controls key shipping lanes. Its semiconductor dominance makes it geopolitically critical. If Taiwan falls, global tech supply chains change overnight. Japan is strategically strangled. The US loses Asia-Pacific dominance. For Japan, there is no alternative. If Taiwan is attacked, Japan is involved. For the US, the decision is harder. Abandoning Taiwan means abandoning Asia. Ukraine is important to Europe, but Taiwan is irreplaceable to US strategy. US involvement depends on 3 factors: Taiwan's will and capability to resist, the cost and risk of fighting the PLA, internal US political struggles. The US will help winners, not hopeless causes. Originally, Xi likely aimed for 2027. Ukraine changed everything. It revealed the realities of modern war and sanctions. Internal purges delayed preparations. That delay helped. Rushing earlier could have been disastrous. Xi wants Taiwan resolved in his lifetime. He is 72. All planning targets 2035. For him, reunification equals national rejuvenation. From around 2032 to 2035 is the danger zone. One spark could ignite a century-defining war. Is there a way to prevent it? Yes, believe the threat, prepare fully, stay united and be clear. Doubt invites war. Weakness invites war. Ambiguity invites war. Strong preparation, unity, and clear commitments can prevent it. That's the paradox. Finally, my position. Support the status quo. Support voluntary reunification. Support peaceful reunification. Support democracy over authoritarianism. Oppose all war. If you found this valuable, please like, comment, and subscribe. That's how YouTube pushes real information to more people. Thank you for watching.